Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TBR's webinar, Custom Tailored Advertising Campaigns, How to Satisfy Our Customers with Digital Marketing Services. I'm Justin Sargent, and I'm hosting today's session. Marketer adoption of digital tools and services is transforming buyer-seller relationships and driving professional services opportunities for vendors with different origins. This demand forces marketing budget keepers to audit existing vendors, especially as CMO and CIO budgets are converging, creating competition and new opportunities within the C-suite. Insights from today's presentation are from TBR's Digital Marketing Services customer research. If you would like to learn more about this report, please reach out to myself or one of the analysts after the presentation. Now, before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. First, we'll be recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube site, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit the site to view this presentation or any of the previous webinars we've recorded. Second, we welcome questions on the material we're presenting today. Please send any questions you have to the Q&A function, and we'll address as many as we can at the end of the presentation. And finally, I'll be following up with all of you via email within 24 hours at the end of this presentation with both the link and the slides from today's webinar. So be on the lookout for that in your email tomorrow afternoon. Now, I'd like to introduce the analysts who are presenting today. Stuart Williams is Vice President of Research at TBR, where he engages TBR clients to promote the value of business insight that helps them improve business performance, capture opportunity, and increase customer engagement. Stuart leads TBR's digital practice, which produces TBR's digital marketing services customer research. Hristov is an analyst in TBR's professional service practice, where he leads TBR's digital marketing services research on digital marketing services vendor profiles, digital marketing services benchmark, the digital marketing services customer buying behavior, and the global delivery benchmark. He also contributes to custom research for clients in financial modeling projects. And with that, let me hand this over to the experts.
Thank you very much, Justin, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Very quick orientation to our views into digital and digital marketing is that we're looking at the transformation of the customer continuum, meaning how digital, meaning technology tools such as cloud, mobile, social, analytics, Internet of Things are being adopted to transform the way that businesses interact with their customers, either other businesses or with actual consumers. Our program here at Technology Business Research is used to provide opportunity identification, to look at customer requirements and buyer behavior and budgeting so that our clients who sell into that space can adjust their messaging and to help them with competitive positioning. What we do is we understand the segment customers' current and evolving behaviors. We look at the realized market opportunity through benchmarking and the potential through our forecast, and we provide insights around exemplar vendor strategies, meaning what's winning in this space. We have several different products in this area, and today's presentation is really based on our end customer research. So let's get started with the view here. When we think about the customer continuum and how it's enabled the transformation of the marketing function from a space where, as we all know the quote, 50% of my marketing budget is effective, I just don't know which 50%. It's really becoming a much more data-driven, financially aware, and proactively astute function inside the business, and one that's going to be able to retain and hold greater share of enterprise budgets and IT budgets as they're able to provide feedback and guidance back to the CFO around the effectiveness of their spend, right? So when we think about the marketer adoption of digital tools, that's the transformation, really. They're getting data, they're making data-driven decisions, they're reaching and integrating all the way from advertising into the buying cycle, through the purchase, and into the post-purchase experience. So integrating all that information is what we're doing here at TBR. And the first segment is really advertising technology, where we're looking at behavior on the buy side, the audience side, the paid advertising. When that converts somebody into a lead or with some personally identifiable information like a mobile IP address or an email, you get into the marketing, and that's the paid and earned experience where you can begin to target that individual. And then eventually they become a funnel lead, you can close them in sales, build a relationship with them through product or service delivery, and hopefully get them out there advocating for your product. They also provide feedback into R&D and service delivery along the way. So today we're going to be talking about that part of the continuum that's serviced by the consultancies, by the IT vendors and the agencies who are working with enterprises to become more mature or to actually deliver marketing services in this area. So that's digital marketing services. What I'd like to do now would be to turn the conversation over to my colleague, Hristov, who can begin to break out some of the different service areas that we're investigating.
Sure. Thank you, Stuart, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Stuart mentioned, in the digital marketing services, we take a step and look into the broader space and who's participating with what kind of skills and tools they bring to the table. And it was somewhat challenging to develop the taxonomy initially, but where we view the market today is we break it down in 4 different segments or 4 different lines of business, starting from digital strategy, creative and branding, web, mobile, and commerce, and advertising analytics. And we believe that at this point where the market is today, those 4 segments are a good representation of what the market is and the type of offerings vendors are presenting and offering and how to capture opportunities within the space. The way we approached developing definitions and the taxonomy for digital marketing services was really looking at the professional services level, but also who are the participants. We have a group of IT services vendors like Deloitte and IBM and Accenture. We have strategy-led guys like McKinsey and BCG and Bain. We also have the traditional digital advertising agencies like Ogilvy and Mather and Razorfish and Digitas and RGA and so on and so forth. So it's a mix of vendors with different origins, as we mentioned earlier, really chasing the marketing dollars. So that brought us down to those 4 different lines of business that we believe at this point kind of captures from a strategic engagement with the C-suite through developing and branding, creative and branding, also the user experience, interactive experience, which is the web, mobile, and commerce, and also permeating of analytics to drive and run marketing campaigns. The next slide, what we want to orient the audience really is the 3 key takeaways of the customer research, digital marketing services customer research we had recently published, and what this presentation is going to tell you today. We look into the opportunity side, the buyer landscape, and the customer and the competitive landscape. The first and foremost, we want to kind of look at the opportunity, and we all talk about the opportunity in terms of a revenue side, a growth opportunity. But also need to make sure we understand the dynamics of the market and where is it today, and what's driving the opportunities as we estimate it to be at around $120 billion by 2020. The marketing budgets are growing. Buyers are really transitioning from traditional conventional mass marketing campaigns to tech-enabled and custom content that really helps to increase brand awareness and wallet share. Typically, when it goes to market, vendors' strategy serves as the primary entry point, but boils down to really at this point of the market is vendors that have the creative, robust creative portfolio are set to a position to capture most of that $120 billion growth opportunity within the next 5 years. The second piece, the buyer landscape. When we look at who the buyers are and what is really driving the dynamics across the C-suite, we see that CMO is still the primary budget keeper, but with advent of technology, particularly analytics, we see an increased role of IT employees being part of the decision-making around marketing campaigns and seeing a digital marketing campaigns part of a larger digital transformation. So as analytics are becoming widely adopted in ad buying, campaign management, and customer interaction, the collaboration between the CMO and the CIO will be really critical for the buyers when selecting the best suited technologies while reducing the marketing spend. So it's kind of that notion of how those 2 can work best together moving forward. And the third key takeaway that we found looking into the customer research is the competitive landscape. Who are the vendors? How do they participate? What are the tools that they use and how they address buyers' behavior? What we saw in the market is, if we can define with one word, is fragmentation. Digital marketing services is highly fragmented. There's no clear winner in terms of a brand that one vendor stands out from the crowd. There are several branded vendors like Accenture and Matter and IBM that are coming out in the leading positions as branded vendors, but there's a whole slew of boutique firms and other vendors that are participating and are competing for essentially for digital marketing budgets. I'll move on to the next slide, please. Diving deeper into the opportunity I just brought up on the previous slide, looking at what's going to drive from today's market, which we estimate around $30+ billion to $120 by 2020 for digital marketing services. Looking at the barriers and drivers, and we have highlighted some of the key barriers and drivers on that slide that we found that end buyers are pointing out to be like, okay, well, these are some of the barriers we see that vendors have to be overcome, and some of the drivers that could present an opportunity. In our view, the barriers certainly are pieces where the other participants have to be able to overcome in order to participate. Is the driver's piece that they have to be able to offer to elevate brand awareness, to improve web traffic, conversion rates. These are pieces that if vendors have to scale up their capabilities in order to get to the $120 billion digital marketing service opportunity that's coming up in the next few years. So it's a mix of looking at the traditional marketing, brand awareness, but also looking at how the digital is permeating and how it's shifting from web traffic and conversion rates to customer engagement. Did you want to add something, Stuart, to that one as well?
Certainly, I think that when we think about the signpost there, barriers and drivers, right? So the barriers segment certainly are the table stakes, right? That these are the things that any of the digital marketing service providers at this point really need to be able to address. So it's traditional items around integration, data management, and then we have cultural issues like business process change, migration to new services. And then interestingly, attribution, right? Advertising attribution is a huge issue in this day and age due to the lack of transparency in the data flow through that ecosystem. It's all happening in real time. Money's being spent out the door in real time, and advertisers have a very legitimate concern around whether or not their advertisements are being seen by a human being, be actually perceived and actioned. And they only want to pay for that. So big problem there. As the marketer drives towards the ROI state, being able to go to the CFO and say, yep, we spent $1,000 and we got $100,000 worth of return. Obviously everybody wants to have transparency and accountability and auditability in that chain. On the other side, the drivers, right? So these are the things that really begin to differentiate the providers in this space. What do people desire? Brand awareness, web traffic, conversion rates, marketing productivity, and customer engagement. Each of these is an element in a different area of being able to measure the performance of marketing. So when we think about a real winning combination, it has the elements of brand awareness, perception, has that practical traffic-related, productivity-related elements in web traffic. Conversion rates and marketing productivity have a lot to do with the ROI, and customer engagement deals with that sentiment as you create that engaged, a true life cycle customer who's going to be willing to go out and make referrals to additional people. Again, the table stakes, and then the elements that we see as really driving winning business as you go towards that $120 billion opportunity.
So on the next slide is kind of getting a layer deeper of exactly what the buyers that we survey and buyers that we survey pointed at how they see digital marketing budgets increasing, and it's kind of like it's really across the board, as we have pointed out on the graph on the left, that across all lines of business, budgets are expected to increase at a substantial rate, actually. And it's somewhat not surprised because as Stuart pointed out, it's about table stakes versus what's next and how they can capture the most of their marketing spend, especially kind of CMO doesn't have any more wiggle room for excuse. There's technology to measure marketing spend and waste, and how can we capture and get the most ROI. We correlate that budget increase to the and to the ROI within the next year. That's kind of really the highlight of looking at. So if you look at the two graphs and kind of orient you about some percentages to get a sense of where the market is. As I mentioned, over 65% expect to increase about it's over 66, between 66 and 73%. So basically, vendors that can attract, engage, buy, retain customers quickly and effectively can stand out the best chance of success, especially when we look at the ROI being expected within 1 year. The way we see that the dynamics of the market is really, the market is somewhat volatile, but it also creates opportunities because buyers are ready to spend as long as vendors, like services vendors or strategy vendors or agencies, are able to provide that ROI that's expected from permeating the technology. And it's how can you measure that? And is it the conversion rate? Is it the customer retention? So certainly a great opportunity in terms of digital marketing spend versus expectation and how fast. That's really boils down to that 40% within 1 year. So the high expectations. So vendors must be able to sharpen up their expertise across all the lines of business, essentially.
Yeah, well, they don't have a lot of time to provide that, to provide the evidence of a win. So clear scoping around that and leveraging that technology to prove your point will help service providers not just win the business, but to retain it over time.
Yep, absolutely. So the next graph is kind of really showing the customer journey and the spend and what buyers are looking to and where they're looking to spend the most and how it varies by stage. Looking at the average expenditure across the marketing services and respondents that we survey. So just to kind of give you a little better understanding of what those different stages means and what type of questions buyers are looking to answer, essentially. The first one is kind of like, I'm passively going from a regular routine. I don't know if I have a problem. I don't know if there's a solution. So it's kind of like we have to, they're spending on money finding that solution, which if there's a solution and identification, essentially. The second part is engage and learn. I realize I have a problem, and I'm actively trying to solve the problem. I'm actively engaging with content, learning, sharing, comparing. I want to understand the technologies and players that are in the space. So how the end buyers are trying to engage and whether they spend their marketing budget is exactly in that. Okay, well, how we can engage with content and more of a custom tailored content. The third part is, okay, well, now we know whether there's a problem. We have potentially found a solution. We're probably ready to get on the phone with a salesperson or whoever is in charge of and find a vendor or technology that will best drive that ROI at the fastest pace. The buy stage is really where naturally the most marketing dollars is spent on, but end consumers are also expecting for a smooth and quick buy because, as we saw on the previous slide, there's not much time to be wasted. And then after the buy stage, we kind of see that the marketing spend kind of decreases. It still exists, but it's about on the adopted deliver side is I want to be able to show how this product is providing value for me. I need to help to implement across my organization, and there's certainly some things I don't understand, so there's certainly value proposition has to maintain, it has to stay in that stage. And marketing spend is not as high here, but we believe that it should be, vendors should be able to not to lose sight of that stage. And the last but not least is the promote and advocate stage is really, I want to share my success and experience with my network and kind of like, can I be the advocate of the brand I've just engaged with? So in net, what we see how that journey and the customer's journey by stages, the higher pre-buy and buy spend comparing to the promote spend during the customer journey really illustrates the buyers that are betting on the creative and branding agencies to develop and deliver really strong brand recognition. However, the digital marketing services market matures, and there's a lot more entrants coming to compete for the share. So opportunities really will rise from for the vendors that can offer a full range of digital marketing services from design and branding all the way through marketing BPO offerings. So it's really about how can you get the full stack of digital marketing services to capture the most across each of the journeys, customer journeys by stage. Did you have something to add on that slide, Stuart?
Well, I think it's you know, people talk. I'm looking at the shape of the numbers here. People talk about the sales funnel, right? And you know, attracting people and bringing them in. And I think that we're going to see the shape and the distribution of this change over time. It's very, very important to realize that there's a mix of firms, mix of industries. Not every industry but has the same pattern, and this is an aggregate view of the companies that are in our study. But you know, the way that the buy stage bumps way out there tells us that there's that strong emphasis on the transaction. Every business functions on transactions, right? But as we're seeing in the research and we're seeing in the customer behavior, people they actually make that decision to buy fairly early in the process, and the actual e-commerce piece and other elements are less important when you have more of an engagement-driven relationship. Not that every business is driven by engagement. Some are purely transactional. So let's move on. So when we think about the role of the different executives in the process, right, we asked the question of the people in our study who were in all different functions, marketers, CFOs, CIOs, people in different marketing areas, sales, who had control, primary control for the evaluation, purchase, and use of digital marketing services in the organization. So when we think about this proceeding through that funnel themselves, right, from determining the need, through the purchase process, speccing things out, then the use phase on the right, training users and ensuring successful use. You know, the CMO really is incredibly important all the way through the funding stage. The CIO jumps up in implementation and training, where the CMO drops to number 2, and then jumps back up to being the primary lead. In about half of all cases, we see the CMO being the most important buyer of services. But this is a distribution among all firms, so not every firm is going to have this behavior. So the subtlety in this chart is that while the CMO is important, they're not the exclusive sell-to person by these different stages for services. The secondary person is the CIO and then the CFO across these life cycles. So tailor the messages that you're creating in the sales process around the barriers and the benefits as you walk these institutions through. It's a complex sale. You have to bear in mind each of the users. And when we think about the people buying the technology, we see that, you know, despite all of the hype and all the conversation about digital marketing technology, the opportunity for the service providers is actually quite strong because the technology deployment is still in an early stage, right? So this chart represents the maturity, self-reported maturity among adopters of marketing technology, digital marketing technology. And we see, you know, roughly, you know, 80 to 90% of organizations are still in that learning, proofing, and scaling up stage, and only 2 to 8% of firms say that they're fully implemented, right? So what's the service opportunity here, right? So we see for those, you know, if you're selling, you have to begin to identify where your target enterprise is in its cycle and begin to have conversations with them around consulting and strategy, IT execution, change management is incredibly important, both business process and cultural change, before you get to the big payoff in the fully implemented solutions. So, and then because marketing is always going on, right? Creative and branding, adapting your creative and branding service to a more digital model instead of just pure outbound. You need inbound, you need reactive, you need people trained up to work with multi-channels at the pace with which that channel works, right? Email is different from instant messaging, SMS. We saw an example, there's a very famous example of an airline that told a passenger that had a flight canceled that their instant messaging service only works between the hours of 9 and 5, right? I'm sorry, businesses are 24/7. If the phone works, you got to be on it, and you have to have your culture and your business process change to go along with it. So when we think about that opportunity and where the space is, these are the key drivers that we see for the forecast that we talked about on our first slide, right? This big growth in digital marketing services. There's a transformation of this function. Every enterprise, every business has a go-to-market function that's going to be touched or transformed through this migration. So let's go to our next slide. And why is that, right? So we asked the buyers, not just people using technology, we said, how do you, if you're not using technology to do this, how are you doing this, right? And, you know, when we think about the use of technology and how do you do these functions, so there's advertising at the top, and then we get into marketing, and then kind of data management at the bottom. And we think that advertising, because it's been going on and the relationships are pretty robust, there's a nice mix of service firms, self-reported, and maybe having a technology person do it. Plus, you know, there's always people who say we don't do advertising, right? So there are firms, there are industries that don't advertise. That government doesn't advertise, right? Allegedly. So the remaining, the marketing functions, the red bars on this chart represent those folks who are performing this function, doing it internally, and using homegrown tools or even spreadsheets to manage that operation. They may be using a tool, but the real key to making it work is a spreadsheet. And we've seen this time and time again. So we see the need for more technology. Customers are reporting this. There's more need for maturity in this space. This is that self-service gap. People are managing this function themselves. They're seeing the opportunity, and they want to drive there. So for service firms, how do you tune your offerings to be able to take advantage of this self-service crisis, because it's only going to get worse as the pace of marketing increases.
Right. So looking at the way the buyers are measuring success and the benefits, kind of like a payback benefit measure, when we look at that chart, it's really a clear representation, it's a clear consensus, really, of the method, the way is used to pay back for digital marketing services. Looking at about 10 out of 16 respondents, 10 out of 16 listed benefits got 30+% as a payback benefit measure. So it's really, it's a consistency. I mean, in terms of what is a consensus, how we want to make sure from, as we mentioned earlier, from elevating brand awareness through everything down below, which is really more tied to the digital side of the house, from customer retention, conversion rates, web traffic, revenue per customer. So those are all channels that digital certainly enables to improve and to increase and get that ROI faster. The elevating brand awareness really stood out as a key expected benefit. Really indicates that although buyers may be attracted from the digital marketing by its ability to enhance revenue-generating activities, ultimately vendors will be judged how well they can elevate brand recognition. It's about that strong and robust creative services that we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Despite all the technology, despite the strategy being an entry point and everything else goes behind the scenes, it's all about creativity, at least at this stage of where the market is today. It's certainly a strong part of how my brand is perceived, how can I retain the customers, how can I gain and retain customers moving forward. Looking at the next part of it is how buyers are measuring, and the key performance indicator, and kind of like across the lines of business. And it's a mix, and it's some of the lines of business have a balanced mix, like the strategy part of it, versus the creative is looking more of a volume. It's about how can we, again, generate more customers. And going down to advertising analytics, it's about financials, because it's really important. Like, if we invest in our technology and kind of tying up to what we saw earlier, how we can measure it, how we can get the most financial benefits in terms of getting the ROI. So 41% of the creative and branding volume appears to be the most important, which sets expectations again for the agency of record to optimize brand perception and recognition. It's about who is your vendor, what do they do? I mean, we know that the marketers have been auditing their agencies of record recently, so we see a shift and a battle between the traditional agencies versus the IT services strategy-led guys, and it's certainly an interesting dynamic. There's new contenders coming into to play in the space, and everyone is bringing skills from user experience, interactive, to marketing BPO, to advertising analytics portion of the house. So it's a very dynamic field, and it certainly, especially when we talk about financial measurements, financial KPIs, integrating analytics tools that can provide the better business outcomes to grow customer wallet share will be really critical for vendor selection as well.
Yeah, Buzz, and one thing that I see that's a potential disconnect, and something that the full service digital marketing services vendor should be aware of, is, when folks are looking at their digital strategy, they have a balanced approach, right? So they're looking at all different kinds of metrics, and then when they actually get into the practice of it, they change their metrics, the use of their metrics, right? So there's a potential opportunity here and a disconnect to not keep a balanced approach in the type of metrics as you move to different areas. And so I think this is a potential warning light or a canary for our service provider colleagues to begin to think about.
So last portion of the presentation is talking about the competitive landscape. And as we highlighted in the beginning of the presentation, the digital marketing services market is, the theater is really fragmented, and it's kind of pointed out on the graph, and then it's really a visual presentation of, we have Accenture, IBM, LOBs as the branded vendors that are standing out. But if we look at on the side, like boutique firms, and when we're looking at our data, about 30% of the respondents are adopting boutique firms. We took them as a group. It was a slew of boutique firms, especially when we talk to vendors in Western Europe, where you have a lot of small local firms that can provide that original message and can relate better to the culture, as well as has those insights, and also they can compete on price with the bigger vendors, especially if the end customer is somebody who is a smaller scale business operations that don't have the budget to spend that someone can spend on Accenture and IBM. So we look at the space and we see all sorts of contenders. As I pointed out, boutique firms, we have the software firms, in-house solutions that Stuart alluded earlier, and we see India-centric firms as well. And as I brought up earlier, what can you bring to the table? Are you going to be a competitor and contender on your own, or are you going to be partnering or become an acquisition target or acquiring certain skill sets that can help you to become a contender, to be really get on the podium of a branded vendor to gain that to be the most adopted vendor from an end customer perspective. So the top three branded one that we see, IBM highlights with really expertise in analytics. LOBs is the creative side of the house, and Accenture is really able to bundle services from strategy and design all the way to analytics and commerce and interactive experience. So that kind of gives them a good position to be able to stand out, essentially, across that crowded marketplace.
And it is crowded, Buzz. You know, when you think about we had a list of vendors in different categories in our survey research that was part of this was extensive, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. We gave the respondents an opportunity, if their agency or firm wasn't on the list, to respond, and that's where we got those strong incidents of the boutique firms in this. There's actually a greater incidence in aggregate of the boutique firms than the branded firms. So let's go to the next slide and think about, well, what does that mean? You know, and so buyers are clearly looking to both branded and boutique firms, and yet when we looked at why they were selected, you know, the drivers were different for branded versus boutique firms. So when you think about the branded vendors, the service customers were looking for knowledge, experience in both marketing and in their industry. This is kind of the key drivers here. So they're the wise counsel, the people who can get things done, and they're the experts, right? The boutique vendors, selection drivers, were value price experience and ease of doing business, right? So this is interesting. It's not that boutiques are any more or less easy to do business with than Accenture, say, but it's a perception. So very important for for firms that are in one or the other category to begin to look across and look at its mirror and be able to say, hey, you know, I'm Accenture. Not only are we wise counsel, but we're also really easy to do business with. You know, it's easy to engage with us, and you are getting a tremendous value. It may be expensive, but we can express that value to you. And of course, everybody needs to have experience. The key differentiators, really, when you think about the service customers, right? They're aspirational, right? Boz talked about the quick turnaround with ROI, the need for value and investment, and the need for confidence in their vendor that they select. And the avoidance then for them on the pain points really is that it's not about the technology, it's even more about culture and process management change, right? So when you go through that change management process with them, both boutique and branded vendors need to address that. You can't just deploy technology. That leads to explosive problems. You need to solve the process and cultural changes. And that helps to mitigate the integration and the data management headaches underneath them as well. So very important, you know, kind of insights for how to make your play into the competitive landscape. I think we talked about the opportunity, the drivers for the opportunity, the customer behavior, and the selection and the ROI. So very, very clear pictures here around how vendors in the digital marketing services space can begin to succeed.
And we also want to talk about who's considered, and they really, like, we looked at from the survey standpoint. We asked the question, okay, have you been happy with, satisfied, how satisfied you with your current services provider? But if you're not, or who would you stay and who would you choose, you know, who will be your next best selection across the lines of business? And the graph really presents kind of like the incidences about across the different lines of business we talked earlier. Really, couple of pieces just to point it out. While Accenture remains in the strategy piece to be a top considered vendor, customer consideration, looking at AKQA, Ogilvy and Mather, I mean, this is traditional agencies talking about then boutique firms. They are building digital strategy capabilities through partnerships, acquisitions, really getting into know and to engage and gain the permission across the C-suite to be able to demonstrate the value of the creative services that they're usually good at. Going down the creative side of the house, Ogilvy and Mather kind of really stands out, and which is no surprise to remain the most considered vendor in terms of a branded vendor to remain as a selection. But we see IBM popping up in terms of 8% of respondents saying, well, we'll be considering IBM because IBM have been investing in talent, have been investing in design studios across the different geographies, and kind of shows that those investors start to pay off and they're able to demonstrate. I mean, while the firm still adopts technology-first solution or consulting second kind of approach, the IBM Interactive Experience have been actually adopting the opposite solution-led approach, which can be scaled up. It can certainly turn around the company of more of a perceived solution-led vendor than just technology. And looking at moving down the stack, when it comes down to large percentage of the respondents really considering boutique firms. Which also boutique firms and other firms, which we already talked about, and looking at the web, mobile, and commerce incidences and advertising analytics, speaks about the fragmentation will remain in the digital marketing services market. It will remain fragmented and open opportunities for new entrants or for consolidation moving forward. So it's certainly a dynamic market. Budgets are increasing. Again, vendors with the proper tools can gain share through organic or inorganic means moving forward.
And so what we've done is we've had a chance to walk through the opportunity, the customer behavior, the competitive landscape, and you know the conclusion here is that you know there's huge opportunity, tremendous growth rate, ties and really a fragmented landscape in which, vendors that can provide both experience and value to the buyers, to be easy to do business with, can really win a significant and grow share in this space. So with that, I think we have a couple of minutes if folks have questions.
Yep, so just a reminder, if you have any questions, please send them through the chat or Q&A function, and let's go with what we have right now. So the first question, could you talk about market maturity across different regions?
So when we did a survey, we survey response in the U.S. and Western Europe. Western Europe, we survey Germany, UK, and France. So across the four countries, essentially, we about 250 respondents, and we saw a disparity in adoption rates. We saw between 19 to 55+% adoption rates across the lines of business. Certainly, the U.S. North America region shows up as more of a mature market right now across all lines of business, more of a closer incidence rate, where Europe is still strategy and creative for superseding the one in analytics and web, mobile, and commerce, which European buyers are a little bit more hesitant to technologies that are, in my opinion at least, that they're not proven, I guess, yet. So it's kind of a slower adoption rate, but it's a very large disparity and speaks about opportunity again, and that the market will continue to grow and to mature moving forward.
All right, our next question came in. You pointed out India-centric vendors as contenders. Where do they stack now? So we're keeping a close eye on the India-centric vendors. I mean, we cover them pretty closely within the professional services here in TBR from IT services perspective, BI, global delivery. Some of them we track even on the vertical specific capabilities. And digital marketing is an area that they're not shy of building scale and expertise. We view them more like they'll be betting on their legacy application development capabilities, which essentially would translate more towards the web, mobile, and commerce side of the house, and building and offering services on the interactive side, and either being real sole providers and partners to other vendors that lack those skills, or move forward and getting into the space as individual and be like really compete on price. Some of the examples that kind of as I'm thinking about like who's doing what. I mean, we know that Infosys, Wipro, HCL, those are kind of three vendors that are looking into kind of they have been more aggressive. Infosys recently bought Scava, which essentially is e-commerce vendors. They're looking to integrate the IP into the operations. The retail vertical is certainly a core vertical for Scava. We also saw for Infosys 4% of the respondents with digital strategy, actually instances for adopting Infosys. So it's kind of a not surprise, because the company has been going through some transformation, but also betting on the new CEO's background of application development, as well as design thinking approach, and really establishing more of a brand and getting permission across C-suite to demonstrate a business transformation about that they can upsell after that web, mobile, and commerce service as well. Wipro recently bought Denmark-based design firm, Designit. We also saw them the 1% of the respondents within the creative and branding service line to adopt Wipro as a vendor. So that speaks, I mean, 1% is not a lot, but certainly they're popping up on the radar in terms of a vendor that can deliver those services and offer them. So HCL is also opening basically client experiences labs, where depending on the client engagement, that leads to opening a hub that can lead to other services, and possibly using that location to cross and upsell to other clients and expand either that client's wallet share or grow accounts in the region that are positioned.
Yeah, and Boz, I just wanted to add one more thing, because this isn't just IT outsourcing, and it's not traditional business process outsourcing. There's a lot of interaction going on between the service providers here and the clients. and there's a high degree of technology enablement in this space. So there's the requirements for the firm that may traditionally only be thinking about IT to help their clients manage change is incredible. As we've called out, change management is really, really important. Yeah. And the transformation of a business through these digital means is the objective. So I think there's a greater challenge to for the Indian firms overall, the traditional, maybe some of the low-cost providers. Not that they can't get there, but I think that they face some of their own transformation challenges in going after this marketplace. I think some of the boutique firms will grow rapidly, and we'll see some probably in 5 years, 3 years, we'll see some new names pop up and likely be acquired by some of those larger firms that are looking to grow share in this space.
Yep. All right, looks like we only have one more question here. Are there emerging services opportunities within the digital marketing services space?
So we brought up in the slides, especially on the customer journey stage, how the vendors are spending money and what it's going to entail to maintain the customer engage and retain and bring up new kind of referrals. So what we see as an emerging space is the marketing BPO that we kind of hinted as an opportunity for some of the vendors that offer a full stack of services. Marketing BPO maybe not so much in traditional people delivered as traditional BPO, but really, again, using the technology and creating marketing BPaaS platforms that can create, vendors that can also develop the IP, they can create alliance opportunities for those tech vendors, or if they want to really move forward to be participants on their own, they can also contend some of the vendors that don't have those skills, like someone like, the big vendors also, like Deloitte, for example, BPO hasn't been into their forte, so it certainly creates opportunities for a smaller tech firm that creates BPaaS and marketing BPaaS, specifically platforms that go ahead and partner with Deloitte and create more of a stronger relationship to go to market together.
The relationships between technology providers and service providers is going to become more blurred. Service providers are going to become software houses in their own right in areas where they have IP or differentiation, and their partnering is going to be enabled. So you talked about business process. I think there's a data economy that's coming up that as a service is incredibly valuable, perhaps not for industry segments where there's a lot of consolidation already, but in areas where there is a lot of fragmentation, the ability to share data across a large number of players so that everybody gets a greater opportunity. Have that brokered is a strong opportunity as well. So the data layer, audience management, transparency, compliance, auditability, there's a lot of layers to this data economy that really will fuel the functionality of the applications that can ride on top of it. Yep. And then applications can get turned into a service, as a service, or be used by somebody to do BPO. Yep. So just kind of as we work our way up the stack, there's lots of transformational opportunities inside of digital marketing services themselves. Yep.
All right, so it looks like all we have for today. So let's thank Stuart and Boz, and thank everyone for your questions and attendance. You can follow the analysts on Twitter here, and please check out our YouTube channel for our previously aired webinars. Before you sign off, I'd like to ask you to take a very brief survey about today's webinars. We're always looking to improve both the information we provide and how we provide it. And I'll leave this open for another few minutes for people to ask any last-minute questions. Otherwise, thanks for attending, and have a great afternoon.